Soldier On acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia. We recognise their continuing connection to traditional lands and waters and would like to pay respect to their elders, both past and present. Soldier On would also like to acknowledge the unique nature of military service and the valuable contribution made by former and current defence members and their families to our nation. Thank you to Navantia Australia for generously providing the filming space for this episode. Content warning. The following episode may contain personal accounts of service, trauma, and mental health. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Saluting Their Service, Contemporary Voices of Bravery. This is a podcast which explores stories of veterans who have served and their journey after transitioning into civilian life. My name is Jason Isaac. I'm a Senior Program and Engagement Officer at Soldier On. And today I'm joined by Chris Bezeg. Welcome.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me.
It's a nice place to come and have a chat to you, Chris. I mean, we're in a nice setting, in a nice office, but before we get into, the environment that we're in right now, I want to have a chat to you about your service and experience joining the Australian Regular Army. What led you to join the Australian Regular Army and, what was your life like before you joined?
Well, what led me to join was my grandfather served in the Army in transport. And I'd quite often hear stories and see pictures on the wall. And also growing up, there used to be these ads on TV that you'd see with the soldiers popping up out of the grass and that sort of thing. And that really inspired me to want to do that sort of thing myself. I used to be big into action movies as well as a kid, growing up in the 80s and 90s, seeing a lot of Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, those sort of movies. And I really loved watching that and seeing all the action. Thought it was amazing. And that sort of inspired me to want to go in that sort of direction, doing sort of actiony, outdoorsy sort of things.
From, hearing that, I mean, we grew up probably in the same era, watching this hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger, go and play soldier.
Yeah.
And obviously that must have been an inspiration for a lot of kids. But also, would you call yourself someone that is a bit more of a practical, hands-on, physical type of learner?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I've always been a hands-on person. I learned a lot of things from my dad by doing rather than reading them in a book. I found that all through school as well. I always preferred the more hands-on subjects, your woodwork, your automotive, that sort of stuff, rather than your book learning.
Let's talk a little bit about, your upbringing. I mean, you spoke about your grandfather and seeing pictures, and that was part of an inspiration. What was your family like? Did you grow up on a farm? Were you living in the city? Did you have chats with your grandfather about his service?
So I grew up in the suburbs. It was a pretty rough area at the time. There was a lot of drugs and that sort of thing in that area. So I'd see a lot of that. I didn't really speak to my grandfather, or he didn't really speak much about his service. He was very reserved and would only speak when he had something to say, really. So we never really spoke much about his service, but I was always amazed and fascinated by it.
And what about your father? Like, did your father have an interest in service, or was he encouraging for your aspirations to join the Defence Force?
My father wasn't really encouraging. He was quite against it. He quite often would say that I wouldn't be cut out for it, or I wouldn't be able to do well, probably because of my wild nature as a kid and that sort of thing. But I think that encouraged me more to want to succeed and do well and really just prove him wrong.
So, he probably had a bit of a viewpoint that, maybe if he asked you maybe take the bins out or go cut the grass, then, there might have been a little bit of resistance. And, so maybe his perspective was based on something like that. But I'm assuming that, you had some sort of passion or desire to go service. This sounds like a pathway for me.
Yeah, 100%. Ever since I was a kid, I knew that was the path I wanted to go down. My father even bought me a few books. I don't know if that was sort of based on SAS and all their sort of exploits. And that sort of made me want to pursue more of that sort of higher end, high tier service role, which ultimately made me want to join 2 Commando. I believe at that time they were 4 Commando, I believe. I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, but, in the early days, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So you enlisted in 2008. Now, you had a bit of a thought, maybe a career objective as to where you'd like to go.
Yep.
Obviously, before you can sort of even look to go towards, a commando regiment, we've got to start at the beginning. So tell me a little bit about your enlistment.
So it began before my enlistment. I made the decision to join up to infantry. And I knew that I wanted to do really well. So I started rigorously training in physical fitness. I became very passionate about getting as fit as I could, just so I didn't want to be the weakest link in the platoon. So I would train day and night, 5 or 6 days a week, and I had a personal trainer, and they knew exactly where I wanted to get to. So they would push me to my limits pretty much. After I enlisted, I was sent to Kapuka, and I remember the first night going to sleep and thinking it was all just a dream. And I remember waking up that next morning to the hallway call, thinking, "Where the hell am I?"
What hallway number were you?
32 Delta. Yeah.
So you would hear hallway 32.
That's it. Yep. And so we'd all do that morning routine of grabbing our bed sheets and lining up in the hallway. So yeah, I found that pretty surreal. A long way from civilian life. It was just a whole different thing there.
Now, to give some of our listeners perspective, waking up in the morning, everyone has a routine, right? Some wake up, have a morning coffee, they get out of bed, maybe they put their slippers on, maybe they go and have a shave, shower, whatever. It's not like that at recruit school. There is routine, but give us a little bit of an idea, like what type of rude awakening could you expect at recruit school?
So you get woken up at 6 a.m. I know that may not sound like much, but from the moment you wake up to the moment your lights out, you're working, you're on the clock. So you wake up, you get really awakened to the hallway. There's a head count first thing, and then straight after that, you've got anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes to make your bed to inspection standard, be shaved and dressed and lined up back in the hallway. And yeah, it's not a lot of time to get that done, but you quickly learn to manage to get it all done in that time. From there, it's straight into breakfast. From there, there might be some admin work, and then on to lessons. You'll have lessons most of the morning. Then you'll have lunch, after that, more lessons or more administration, such as your laundry or polishing brass, that sort of thing. From there, dinner, and then more lessons after that.
Yeah. So as soon as you're woken up in the morning, it is pretty much go time.
Yes.
You know, everything's structured. Everything's got its purpose, right? And for our listeners, that some of those rude awakenings are, when you're standing in the hallway, you've got your bed sheets covering your body, and you're doing a hallway number, and that number has to come out quite quickly, doesn't it? And every person has their number to say. And if there is a skip or a miss in that number, what do? Start again.
Yes.
So we might repeat that process as many times needed, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So during your recruit training, give us a little bit of an insight. I mean, you obviously sound like you prepared well. You had a personal trainer before joining defence, and you would work on your fitness, cardio, strength, basically your whole body, because being a soldier requires that. Tell us a little bit about your journey with your fitness, your lessons, your learning, and your ability to become a soldier.
So when I was doing my fitness training, I focused on all body every day because I figured in defense or in the army, in a wartime situation, you're not going to be able to say, hold on guys, it's leg day today, not doing arms. So my goal was to just focus everything every day and build up that tolerance for working at that level. I also would look online for any extra information that I could find for things that I might need to learn, things such as map reading, lockpicking, any sort of extra skills that might help me along the way to make life easier once I did join.
Yeah. And it sounds like you had a lot of determination, to give yourself the best possible opportunity to become a good soldier. Tell me, were there any sort of setbacks that you sort of discovered or you experienced along your journey? Earlier on in training, or maybe even a little bit further as you progress through.
So shortly after joining in 2008, about 6 weeks in through my training, I received a stress fracture in my foot, and that was quite a setback. I remember going to the RAP saying that I had a bit of a sore foot, and I was finding it hard to march properly.
Mm. Yeah. So for those that don't know what RAP is, it's pretty much like going to a doctor, right? So it stands for the Regimental Aid Post, like booking in to go see a GP.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I went down there and they immediately sent me off for some x-rays and they came back with a stress fracture in my foot. From that moment on, they pulled me out of training away from my mates that I was getting to know quite well and quite close with, and got sent to a rehabilitation platoon there. From there, they sent me home for 6 weeks on convalescence to heal up before returning after that. So that was quite a setback because you get into the rhythm and your mates that you're going through with, and you learn to know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and you can compensate and help each other out with that. So then being pulled out and pretty much thrown in with another group of guys that you know nothing about, and you have to learn what their quirks are and that sort of thing, and get to know everybody again. It's a bit rough when you're going through such a difficult time in the recruit training.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could imagine that when you are injured, your platoon at recruit school are going to continue moving on a journey of their training because you have a stress fracture. you're unable to keep up, unable to continue progressing in that level of training. And how did you feel in that moment? I mean, you've shared a little bit about having to learn new people and get to know, um, you know, people within the rehab platoon. But what was going through your mind, or what was going through your thought process, for your training?
Um, so I felt a bit like I was when you're in the holding platoon there with the rehab guys, you sort of feel like you're almost like spinning your wheels in the mud. Like you're there, you're progressing in time, but you're not progressing in training. So in a sense, yeah, you feel like you're not really getting anywhere, even though you're putting the time in. You also wonder, how are you being looked at from an outside point of view? Like, will people look down on you, like you're weak or something in that sort of sense, because you did get injured.
And you're far from weak. I mean, injuries happen, you know. You might feel like that, but injuries happen and it's not your fault. So you were at rehab platoon, and then you said you were sent home for 6 weeks. What
Yeah.
was happening at home during that time?
At home, I spent a lot of time with my then girlfriend, pretty much just catching up with her, spending a lot of time, as much time as I could, with what I had available.
Mm.
And so then coming back after that, after spending 6 weeks pretty much with her the whole time, it was quite difficult to then leave her behind and return back.
And was that the first time you've seen her since enlisting?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the first time I'd seen her in 8 to 10 weeks. So yeah, it was difficult. Yeah.
You went through 6 weeks of spending time, to recover, but then also spend time with your girlfriend. You came back to Kapuka. How did things go once you came back to Kapuka? I mean, were you fully recovered? Were you able to pick up where you left off? Were you with a new platoon?
So after I came back, there was 6 weeks of further rehabilitation. It was a lot of physical fitness training. They needed to make sure people were pretty much back up to fighting fitness. So we'd get pretty much smashed with physical fitness training twice a day.
Mm.
So there'd be one PT session and then another session in the pool in the afternoon. And in between that, there was a lot of downtime where you'd have all your thoughts just going through your head, like what's going on? What am I doing? It was very difficult, because you just end up playing all these mind games with yourself, which sort of added to feeling a bit homesick and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and what happened? Like, did you end up getting to a point to graduate as a recruit?
So because I'd gone home and spent all that time with my girlfriend, she then found that she was struggling with me being away. And ultimately, through letters, I decided to leave for her.
Mm.
A decision I now regret, but it was the decision I made at the time. And so shortly after getting returned to the platoons and trying to make new friends and that sort of thing, I decided to leave for her, and ended up discharging at my own will.
A lot was going through your mind, and, a lot was happening during recruit training. I mean, you're navigating injury. You also went home to spend time with your girlfriend, then to come back to recruit training. So there's a lot going on there. And you've made a decision to leave Defence Force to go back to spending time with your girlfriend. What was going through your mind then? I mean, did you go to a job? Were you looking to go and do some study, or had the idea of service still captured, your passion and purpose?
Yeah, so I returned to civilian life, and for a while I was happy, I was fine, but I still had that niggling feeling in the back of my mind that I really wanted to serve, that I
Mm.
really wanted to get to what I'd set out to achieve. And it was only a short while after leaving that I realized that it was a mistake to do it for someone else. I was working for a while, just doing odd jobs here and there. I didn't really have felt like I didn't really have a purpose. So I was working as a labourer through a labour hire company, doing various roles there. Shortly after that, it would have been about 6 or 7 months later, I went back to defence recruiting and said, look, I've made a mistake. I'd like to return to service. Initially, they told me no, but they never said why. Um, and once they said no, I had to wait 12 months before I could even try again. So 12 months went by. I re-enlisted or reapplied.
Mm.
Once again, they told me no, without any reason. Uh, so I kept trying and trying and trying. Eventually, after about the fourth or fifth time, they actually gave me a reason and said, you need to go out and do this, this, and this, and then we'll look at, getting you back in.
Mm.
So the next day I went out, went through, got everything that they were requesting.
What sort of things was Defence asking you to do?
So they wanted a letter from a psychologist saying that, I'm of right mind, that I'm ready to return, that there's nothing wrong psychologically, that sort of thing, before they would even look at my application.
What about the rest of the testing phases? Like, did you have to go through, say, a new application, maybe aptitude testing, physical testing, medical testing? Did you still have to go through all that because you've previously been through that?
Yeah, I had to go through all that again, like I was a brand new recruit. So I went down, they sent me for the U session, I believe it's called, where you go in, you interview, you do your health assessment, you do your aptitude testing, you do an interview with the psychologist. During that interview, I got a bit feisty with him because he was saying that he didn't think I was ready to return, and I think he was just trying to find a way to push my buttons and see how I'd respond. But yeah, he was ultimately saying, yeah, look, I'm not sure if you're ready to return. And then I went into the last interview already in defensive mode, and straight off the bat, I'm like, look, I'm ready. I don't need to wait another year, yada, yada, yada. And the officer interviewing was like, whoa, hang on. I'm on your side here. I agree. You're ready. So after that, they accepted my application and sent me off to do the fitness testing down at Vic Barracks.
And I'm sure you passed the fitness test in colours.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That was yeah.
So
compared to what I was doing, that was a walk in the park. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I guess, like if you've got a career aspiration to become part of Special Forces, the fitness, the mental fortitude has to be quite switched on, and it's not to be taken lightly. So I'm sure that you put yourself in a very good position to re-enter. Let's fast forward to, so you went through recruit school for the second time. This time you graduated. Where did you go after you graduated from recruit school?
So after recruit school, I went to Singo, and
so for those that don't know, what is Singo?
So Singo is the School of Infantry in Singleton. Everybody just calls it Singo for short.
Mm.
After I got to Singo, I was put into a holding platoon, and ended up getting randomly selected to do security work for there's some sort of dignitaries thing happening at Randwick base. And I remember going there fresh out of recruit school, not knowing what to expect, suddenly thrown into this world where there's all these high-ranking officers walking around and just being blown away by everything there. I was shaking like a leaf.
Not literally blown away, but, yeah.
No. They tasked me with having to stop people from entering a certain area where some dignitaries were residing or having a meeting. And it was very nerve-wracking having to tell these higher-ranking officers that they couldn't go down that area.
Yeah, because you were a private.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was very daunting.
After that engagement of being given that sort of special duty, you went back to Singleton to continue your infantry training?
Yeah. So I was in holding for 8 to 10 weeks. And during that time, you do lessons, and it'll be things like your medical lessons, navigation, and I believe it was shooting as well. And you just rotate through those until you eventually get put into a platoon. And you're also doing PT every day as well.
To maintain your fitness, and, a holding platoon is you are waiting to go and actually start your initial employment training as an infantryman?
Yes.
Right.
Yep. So eventually we got put into a platoon. I ended up in Longtan platoon, and I absolutely loved it. I took to it like a fish to water. Certainly, I had a hard time with Kapuka. I did not enjoy that at all. But infantry training, absolutely loved it.
It's a little bit more specialised. Recruit training is setting, I guess, a foundation to become a soldier. Infantry training is now training you specific set of skills. Almost sound like Liam Neeson there, special set of skills. But you are learning your tradecraft to become, an infantry soldier. Give us a little bit of an insight as to, you've gone through, you do some medical training, you do some navigation, you do some, weapons training. What are some of the factors within the training that help you become a good infantryman?
I think doing the basics well. So paying attention, listening in properly, and taking everything on board really helps with progressing and getting the most out of your training.
And you've got new mates. You've got, you've moved into, a new platoon. You've formed some new friendships. How was that going?
That went really well because we were all there for the same purpose. We're all wanting to be infantry. We weren't in with people wanting to be transport or admin people. So we were all there. We're all focused. I found that really good and really beneficial.
I could imagine that being in infantry, it's all physical work. You're in the field. Was there any challenges that you were facing during your training?
There's nothing that jumps out at me that I found too challenging. I did actually have a hard time with one of the pack marches where we were carrying, I believe it was Mag 58s and Maximi machine guns. And we were marching along, I believe it was an 18-kilometre pack march early in the morning. And we were marching along, and it felt like it was never ending. At one stage, I was sweating that badly. I had sweat all in my eyes, and I actually couldn't physically open my eyes. I had that much sweat in them. And I had to hold on to the guy in front of me's pack so I could actually keep marching and not wander out or wander off. And it's funny, during these pack marches, you begin thinking of ways to try to make it easier, as grunts tend to do. one of the ideas I thought of was because when you're marching like that, you quite often end up with a lot of flies on your pack. And my thought process was to put a layer of glue on the top of my pack, so when the flies land, they would land on that pack and get stuck in the glue. So then when they went to fly away, they'd help lift my pack up off my shoulders for me. take some of the weight off my shoulders.
Did that work?
No. But these are the sort of things that go through your mind while you're pack marching with those sort of heavy loads.
How much weight was in your pack?
Anywhere up of 45 kilos in the pack, plus you've got your webbing, your body armor, helmet, and rifle. So
it's a significant amount of weight that you were carrying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've had people in my own platoon previously that would carry weights of the same caliber, but then they would put a water jerry into their pack, like a 20-litre, fill it up, and they would have a hose that would come out and use that, and they'll be drinking the water as they marched. And their theory was that my pack's getting lighter because I'm drinking the water out of my pack.
Yep.
Did you have anyone like that?
Not that I know of, but yeah, we always had to have our packs checked before and after. So there was no shortcuts, unfortunately.
If you didn't have the required equipment, what would happen?
Yeah, probably have to do it all over again.
Yeah, repeat the process.
Yep.
Now, looking at your service period, is there so many real significant defining moments that you can, recall that give you some good memories?
Do you remember doing the gas training? And it was the middle of summer, and we got up that morning, and we had to go down to this area where they've got like it's almost like a little garden shed, and it was quite hot that day. I believe it was going to be 37 degrees, maybe even 40, and so you're in your normal uniform. And then you have to put on this chemical overalls sort of thing with a gas mask. And before you go in to do your gas training, the PTI had come out and pretty much just smashed us with physical training whilst we were in all that gear. And so we were knackered. And then we had to go into this tiny little, it's almost like a little garden shed, and the staff had filled it with like a tear gas, CS gas, I believe.
Mm.
And so you go in there, and because you're so sweaty from the training, it actually gets into all your pores and everything. It's pretty horrible. And you go in there, you take your mask off, and you have to count 1, 2, 3, ABC, that sort of thing, just so you can feel the effects of what it feels like to be hit with this sort of stuff. So come wartime or any other time, you don't panic if you do get exposed to that sort of thing. Okay, I've been hit with this. This is what I need to do.
There was a guy that we had in our platoon. We just completed gas training. We were given instructions. Make sure you wash your uniform and your equipment in cold, soapy water. Don't use hot water. The guy didn't listen to the instructions. He asked us. Now, diggers, we love each other. But when there's an opportunity, you take it.
Yep.
He asked, how do I clean my equipment? We said, you go into that laundry, a very small, tight space. Turn on the hottest tap. Make sure it's hot, boiling water. Fill the sink up. Put your clothes into it. And whilst he's doing that, we all shut the doors on him. He got regassed. He only did that once.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you have any experiences like that? or funny stories?
We had a guy who was constantly forgetting his rifle, and we went outfield, and he left it laying next to his pack and went off to do something, and the corporals ended up taking it. And from that moment on, he had to use a stick as a rifle. And we always all thought it was the funniest thing because they'd always be like, "Oh, did you clear that stick, mate? Make sure you check safe." Yeah, it was
How
good
long did he was issued with that stick?
time. He had that stick for a good 3 or 4 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Took it everywhere with him?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So until he could prove that he was proficient at carrying that stick with him everywhere he goes, then they decided, okay, you can carry your rifle now.
That's right. Yeah.
These are some great stories, and every person that has served has got some really fond memories of their service. And it's that camaraderie and bond that you share with your mates that make it all worthwhile. Moving forward into your training, and, I'm sure that you were probably getting near to the end of your training. What was your next phase? Where were you hoping to land?
So I had ambitions to go to 2RAR because I heard that was the amphibious unit. And given that my goal of 2 Commando, they were an amphibious unit as well. So I had aimed to go and get some experience working in an amphibious unit. From there, progress into recon. And then from recon to then apply for 2 Commando. That was my roadmap. I never actually quite got to 2RAR. We just started our field phase, and we went out and got smashed with PT one morning. This was after Peza.
So what is Peza?
So Peza, which is the Physical Employment Standard Assessment. And so we'd just done that and gone outfield. And I remember getting smashed with PT one morning because we weren't performing well. And I found that I was having trouble keeping up with the rest of the guys in my platoon. I'd had some niggles that I'd put down to just being a bit of inflammation and figured that they would just work themselves out. However, that didn't seem to be the case. And I found that I couldn't keep up with the guys in my platoon due to just the soreness that I was experiencing. So after that PT session, I decided to talk to the medic, and he took me down to the rapper. And
which is the aid post?
Yes.
Like seeing your GP?
Yep. And they sent me off to get some testing done. Turns out that I had a labral tear in my right hip and rotator cuff in both shoulders.
Wow. So this almost sounds like deja vu to when you first were going through recruit training, but a different set of injuries.
Yes. Yeah. It was quite a kick in the guts, really, to be getting so far and doing so well, and then for my body to just let me down like that.
So how did defence help you during that phase? I mean, you've spent quite a bit of time now through recruit training into initial employment training. What was the management plan to try and help you continue moving forward in your career goals?
So I got taken out of my platoon and put back into holding. During that time, I would attend rehab up at the local hospital there. I also got sent off to see some specialists and get some advice there. After a small amount of time, it seemed like my injuries were starting to mend. So they'd slowly start transitioning more myself into harder and harder, more physical rehab in the hopes that I'd be able to build up the strength again and rehab the injuries. However, after a while of doing that, I'd find that my injuries would sort of return, like the pain would return. I'd re-injure and end up back at square one.
It sounds very challenging for you, emotionally, but also physically. Were you replaying thoughts in your mind about what previously happened?
Not exactly, because I still had hope that I would be able to rehabilitate and return, maybe not to my own platoon, but back into infantry and carry on. After a few weeks, actually, it was probably a couple of months of doing that, they decided to transfer me to Holsworthy, to the rehabilitation centre there. That was a bit of a system shock, because suddenly I'm away from Singleton, which I'd grown to love, and now in a different environment, whole different set of staff and peers.
How long did you spend at Holsworthy in the rehabilitation?
So at Holsworthy, I think I spent about 10 or 11 months doing a lot of rehab there. I'd find that I'd make progress, and then all of a sudden I'd end up back to where I was again, because my injuries would just play up again. I don't know if they were trying to push me too hard, too fast. I'm not exactly sure, but that's what would end up happening.
So in your day, you're at the rehab unit and you're going through doing all the different requirements by, what you're asked to do. Did it sort of feel like you were, just repeating the same thing day in, day out? How did that play out with your mind and your body? Do you feel like you were progressing, or do you feel like, as you said earlier, spinning the wheels in the mud?
At first, it felt like I was slowly progressing, but after about the third time of ending back where I was, I was starting to get over it. Like I said earlier, it just felt like I was spinning my wheels in the mud and not progressing anywhere. It was a little while after that where I was called into a room where there were all these officials there, and they'd come to the decision to offer me or remove me from infantry training altogether.
It must have been a big shock
Yeah.
for you to hear that. Your career and, I guess, goals were to go through infantry training, go to the amphibious infantry unit, then to step towards commando training. So now that's changing. What were the options that they were giving you?
So they told me that I could either go in or stay in as a cook, in transport, or as a QE. None of those roles really appealed to me. I was there to do one job, and that's what I was determined to do. And it was really demotivating to suddenly have that taken away from me.
What was the process then? I mean, they've given you some options. Those options, they didn't align with what you signed up for. So you felt, you didn't have the motivation to continue on. You were probably deflated because of your injuries. There's a lot going on for you. So what was the next stage? What was your decision from there, or did Defence have a decision?
So after that, they gave me a little bit of time to think about it and consider my options. I did think a lot about it, and I was pretty gutted, to be honest. Um, I was pretty angry. I spoke about it with my partner back home, and in the end, I decided to discharge, given that none of those roles aligned with what I'd set out to achieve.
So transitioning into civilian life, you transitioned because your career hopes and dreams had fallen through. What was the challenges in transitioning into civilian life? Because now you need to find employment. Maybe you've still got your injuries that you're navigating. Did you have any challenges, as to where you were moving forward, or how did you find yourself?
So once I left, I found that I'd lost a lot of confidence in myself and my abilities, because I took a lot of pride in being really strong, both mentally and physically. And now, all of a sudden, I was back out as a civilian. I'd lost my job in defence, which I was extremely proud of, and it was a real confidence shake. Um, so I'd found that I was really struggling to work out what I wanted to do from there on. I didn't really want to go out or see anyone. Um, I spent a lot of time just with my family, and didn't really want to see my friends or anything that I had in the civilian world, because I thought that they would look down on me, that I'd I'd been kicked out, essentially. Um, so that was a real struggle.
When you left the army and you returned home and you're with your family, what was that experience like? You've come from a structured environment within the Defence Force. Now you're living in community.
Yeah, I found that transition quite difficult. Um, I found that I had trouble thinking of what I wanted for myself. So I was always waiting to be told what to do and when to do it. For example, my wife would ask, what do you want for dinner? And I had no idea. Like, I'd just be like, well, just put something in front of me. I'll eat it, because I wasn't used to having that thought of what do I want. I was used to, this is what you're having. So that was quite difficult. My wife had a bit of trouble understanding that side with that sort of thing. She sort of gets it, but I don't think she fully understands how much service life changes you. I would be at the supermarket, and I'd be looking at cereal and just not knowing. I'd just so used to, you go to the mess, this is what you're having. You have a few different items to pick from. That's all you've got.
Was there other things like maybe certain words or certain phrases, or maybe the way that we have conversation with people?
Yeah, I find I use a lot of military terms still, and talk in like military talk. For example, if my wife says something still these to this day, and I don't quite hear her, I'll be like, "Say again," and she absolutely hates me saying that, but it just comes out like it's natural, and I have a hard time, changing that sort of side, you know, back to civilian talk, essentially.
I guess, you get used to, when you're in the field, using radios and, having a certain way of how we're to communicate, waiting for pauses and breaks and etc. And it's quite funny because it almost becomes instinctive when you're talking to your civilian friends or your family.
Yeah.
So I could imagine your wife, asking you a question and you not maybe hearing that properly and, say again.
Yeah, 100%.
So we know that support can come in many forms, and ex-service organisations that support our veterans and their families can play a vital role in supporting someone like yourself that has gone through some significant challenges and now finding yourself transitioning into civilian life. It's not uncommon that we have veterans that will face isolation and, based on, you sharing part of your story is that you felt isolated, you felt embarrassed. Did you end up tapping into any support organizations that were able to help you maybe deal with those challenges?
So during my transition period, I got sent to I don't know if it was a seminar or a conference, that something similar to that, for transitioning members from defence. And there was a lot of information that was thrown at you in this. It went over, I believe it ran over 2 days. And I remember the one thing that I took, that I made sure that I remembered, was during that they said, if there's one thing that you should remember, it's when you get out to find a DVA advocate. And I implanted that pretty much in my brain. And as soon as I got out, I went down to the local RSL, which was Greensborough, and spoke to them there. And they said, yep, if you come back at this time, we've got a DVA advocate you can see. So I went and saw him, and he was tremendously helpful with navigating, putting in claims, what was required. He helped me find a doctor that knew the DVA system because he was an ex-Navy doctor, which was very helpful. So he knew exactly what was required to fill out forms so that my claims for my injuries would go through without any hiccup. I also got contacted by a group called Helping Heroes, and they assisted with my rehabilitation because I still required that for my injuries. So I'd meet with them quite regularly, and they'd write up a plan of how we go about rehabilitating and making sure that I was looked after.
It sounds like you've started on a good pathway to get some support, and it is vital that we connect in with ex-service organisations that are positioned to help veterans transition in their civilian life. You mentioned Helping Heroes, and they're a great organisation because probably very specialised for your needs. So I understand that they work on your physical rehabilitation. They also help with vocation, and they also help with maybe some psychosocial goals. Soldier On and Helping Heroes have a good connection, where we have a collaboration where we help support employment for veterans and their families. Share with me a little bit about your transition. Like, you've got support with your DVA claims, you're getting support through Helping Heroes with your rehabilitation. Did they also help you step into, employment, or how did that come about?
So after linking up with them, they helped with the rehabilitation side, and then after a while, we looked at me returning to the workforce. There was no push. They just said, when you're ready, when you feel like you're ready, we can discuss that. So I had a meeting with them, and we discussed my interests and things that I could possibly do work-wise. I said that, pretty much I had no transferable skills really from military to the civilian area, except maybe discipline, and that was probably about it, really. So I said, I'd probably look at doing some sort of training, maybe some study, that sort of thing.
They help you discover a pathway, don't they? Similar to Soldier On, we look at employment, we look at education, we look at different pathways that are going to enable you to be able to find a pathway that provides a sustainable future and provide meaning. Tell us a little bit about, what you do now and what that transition from where you were with Helping Heroes to where you are now.
So Helping Heroes, I was with them. They helped me find a job within locksmithing first, and I started off doing that, and I found that I I did enjoy that, but I couldn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. So I was trying to find something where a career where I could do until I retired. And I remember getting an email from Soldier On with a work event where they'd have a whole lot of different recruiters in one area looking to hire on veterans. I had no idea what to expect, but I went down with an open mind. So I went in there and was immediately greeted by yourself and told to get in, mingle, and get to know the people there. I spoke to a few different recruiters there, and eventually spoke to Olivia from Navantia, and told her a bit about my history and what I'd been studying, which was cybersecurity, and said that I was looking to break into ICT. She said that they may have a spot for me and to give her my resume. And so I did that and actually thought I'd probably never hear anything from them, much like a lot of other places that I'd applied for. However, a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call saying, hey, we've got an opportunity for you to come down and interview. And so I went down and had my initial interview.
How did your interview go? I mean, you started by saying, probably won't get a phone call. Just like many other companies out there, they receive my resume, they may not call. When they called and said, come in for an interview, how did you feel?
I was overwhelmed. It was really good to actually be considered, especially for a field that I'd been trying to break into. Because currently, or at that time, I'd been working in a factory and hating every moment of it. So finally, to have a foot in the right direction, it was really good. So I went down and did the interview, and I found it was quite challenging because I had no experience working in that field. Given that I was an infantryman, had no real work experience with IT, even though I grew up with a lot of it. But during the questioning, I was able to relate some of my own personal experiences to answer the questions. So things such as, have you ever had to explain something technical to a non-technical person? And I was able to relate that back to when I'd had to explain to my wife that for our son's Xbox account and how that would link into his Microsoft account and how all that sort of thing worked. And so through that sort of personal experience, I was able to relate it to answering the question.
That sounds remarkable. I mean, you've been able to take an everyday example and use that in your interview for a role for ICT. But you've used your son and his Xbox and explaining that to your wife as one of the examples in your interview. That's pretty impressive. And what would you say to someone that, is trying to think of an example? I mean, you've given a great view on that. But what led you to giving that type of example?
It was just something I could think of at the time. It just popped into my head. Because I know my wife, she quite often struggles with the technical side. So it was just the first thing that came to mind. But generally, I definitely would say, link into personal experiences. And I mean, you just have a crack, really.
Yeah, don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
What you think might be an example that's not valid, could be actually a really strong example, would you say?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. So now you're working for Navantia Australia and you're working in ICT. How is this culture? Like, it's a different environment. You're based in an office, considered as a white-collar worker. You're not an infantryman anymore. You're not in the field. You're not using your hands or doing all that sort of, I guess, physical stuff that you would have loved to do. What's it been like for you coming into this environment?
It's been good. It's been a positive experience. I do miss all the infantry things that I used to do. I quite often think about it, especially when I see other people that get to do that on a daily basis. It is still difficult, and I do have days where I do feel down, and I do get days where I feel quite down about it all. However, I just think of my family and that I'm providing for them, and I just pretty much aim to do the best job that I can do, and have set a new goal of moving from ICT desktop support to cybersecurity. So instead of being the warrior on the battlefield, I'm the warrior in the cyberspace.
I know that Navantia have a good veteran employment strategy. They employ veterans, they employ spouses, and they employ civilians. What's your experience with the culture and the support that you receive in this place?
So I found the culture to be really good. They're very understanding of veterans and what they've been through. And given that there's quite a few veterans here, that's also very good. So if you are having a tough time or a tough day, you can then approach them and say, look, this is how I'm feeling. And they get it. They've been through it themselves. So having that support there as well is really good. They've also got, things where they give you, say if you are a reservist, you get reservist leave to be able to attend those sort of things, which is really good, and really good that they understand the veteran ways.
It sounds like a positive environment that really helps support members that are transitioning from defence into a civilian role. Now, your army, Navantia Australia, is primarily, shipbuilders, and they look at maintenance and, all the engineering capabilities that go along with our Navy. Is there many army people working within Navantia?
I'd say there's only a handful. I believe there's about 4 off the top of my head. They are primarily Navy. There's a few Air Force, but Navy's the predominant one.
Question for you. Does anyone here that served in the Navy call you a Pongo?
I have had it once or twice, yes.
Now, for our listeners, it's Navy call Army Pongos because where the Army goes, the smell goes. So there's, I'm sure the banter and the camaraderie in this environment is quite healthy.
Yes, yeah. Like I call the Air Force guys the Chair Force guys. Ask them, how their training was, if they managed to book in the 5-star hotels all right, and that sort of thing.
It's quite healthy to have, this bit of banter and conversation, and it's one of the things that I love about service is that 1 minute you can be having so much banter with each other, but then the next minute, you are, supporting each other on a very large scale. And that's a culture that, I'm proud of, and it's, I'm sure you're very proud of your service.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we finish, Chris, I wanted to ask you, there's going to be listeners from the Australian Defence Force, there's going to be our veterans, and there's going to be regular community members that are listening. Is there any sort of suggestions or advice that you would give to someone that might be transitioning into civilian life?
I'd probably suggest take up a hobby or pick up an old hobby that you had. I found that very helpful when I transitioned because you go from a very structured and area or routine where you're told what to do, when to do it, and then suddenly you've got all this time and you have no idea what to do with it. So I found having a hobby was very beneficial. It also helps keep your mind active and not thinking of, negative thoughts.
And do you find that by having a hobby and by having a good culture and an employment base, it has provided you with some, purpose and meaning?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it means that when I'm not working and my mind's focused on the work, my mind's focused on my hobby or my family. And so there's very little time to sort of end up in that dark place where a lot of veterans seem to end up, which is very sad.
Chris, thank you for your service. You've shared, a very unique story, but a very common story also, of the highs and lows of service, transition, injury, and everything that comes along with it. But it's really good to see that you've been able to transition into a very supportive culture within Navantia Australia. So thank you for your service, Chris, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of Contemporary Voices of Bravery. We look forward to you joining us for our next episode, where we'll look at another veteran and family member's journey and career beyond service. This podcast is proudly presented by Soldier On. Soldier On is a not-for-profit veteran support organisation delivering a range of services to enable serving and ex-serving veterans and their families to thrive. Should today's podcast elicit any personal concern, a list of support services can be found in our show notes. Saluting Their Service, Contemporary Voices of Bravery is a production of Art Videography and Soldier On. The Saluting Their Service, Contemporary Voices of Bravery podcast was funded by the Department of Veterans Affairs. Thanks for listening.